Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Kansas City Public School Board of Directors for March 30th. This meeting is called to order. June, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Barca,
Present.
Miss Buckner. I think she's getting coffee. Miss Cortez, Miss Ford, or yes, yeah, you're here. There's Miss Buckner. Dr. Jones,
Present.
Miss Wolsey,
Here.
Mr. Hogan.
Here. Are there any objections to the agenda as presented? Not seeing any, so the agenda is approved. June, will you please go through the old action items for us?
The outstanding action items that I have is the ways to use Naviance as an example to talk with the counseling department. And then that is the only one outstanding. The communications and marketing goals will be discussed next week at the workshop.
How long do we think we're on track to get that first one over to us soon? Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Woodley. All right. Thanks, June. All right. Well, with that, we'll go right into public comment, and we'll start with Mr. Curtis Rogers. Are you here? There he is. Hello, sir. Welcome. You will have former board member. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service, sir. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming back as well to talk about accreditation. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Board Chair, Mr. Horn, school board members, Superintendent Mark Bedell, administrative staff, teachers, certified staff, and non-certified staff. My name is Curtis Rogers. For those of you who don't know me, I attended Benjamin Banneker Elementary School, K-6. I attended R.T. Cole's Middle School, grades 7, 8. And I attended Lincoln High School, which is now Lincoln Academy, grades 9 through 12. I taught at Lincoln High School for 5 years, served as assistant principal at Southeast for 9 years, served at Van Horn High School for 1 year, and I served as acting principal at Humboldt High and Westport Middle School. I served as principal at Fairview Alternative School from 1980 to 2002. I retired in 2002 after serving under 20-plus superintendents. I was elected to the Kansas City Public School Board of Education and served from 2012 to 2016. When I started in 1966, Kansas City Public Schools had 66,000 students. When I left in 2002, we had 16 to 17,000 students. My real reason for addressing the Board of Education is to congratulate the school district in acquiring its full accreditation from the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It's been a very long journey. The school district was under the supervision of the Desegregation Monitoring Committee and the federal court. We saw magnet schools come and go. Then the district was under the State Monitoring Committee. There were many things we were required to do. We persevered. Today, we are fully accredited. Thanks to the school board for your leadership and your support. It's a tough and sometimes thankless job. Dr. Bedell, you have been a blessing. I was on the search committee when the school board hired you unanimously. We knew we had a gem. To the school board, treat him right and keep him. Other school districts are always looking. Now that much is true. Thank you, administrative staff. The superintendent cannot do it alone. An outstanding and loyal staff and a talented leader will get the job done. Teachers, you have done an absolutely outstanding job. You work with our students, all of them, to get the job done. Although we still have much work to do, you have raised the bar. To the certified and non-certified staff, congratulations. Buildings have to be kept, schools have to be secured, students have to be fed. The job you do every day sometimes go unnoticed, but I want you to know we appreciate you. Thanks, Kansas City Public School System. continue the outstanding job you're doing. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers, for your kind words, and yeah, it means a lot. Thank you for your service to this district and to this city. We really appreciate it. All right, we'll ask Miss Nancy Simmons now, or is it Simons? Simons, apologies, from the Blue Valley Neighborhood Association. Welcome, ma'am, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good evening. I would like to thank the board for all their work they've done over the many years. My name is Nancy Simons, and I've lived on the east side of Kansas City, Missouri for 55 years. I attended Manchester Grade School on Truman Road. We used to watch presidents come by in their motorcade as we would line Truman Road to watch them go to President Truman's house to visit. Back then, teachers were like family, and we treated them as such. Being a community leader and on several boards, I was asked to assess the Kansas City School District, Kansas City schools, and charters. Some of the problems to address with the public schools is communication. Our community went over the 2030 blueprint, but one of the mothers said she tried to enroll one of her children in pre-K. She called several times with no response. Finally, she gave up and went to a charter, and within 1 week, the child was attending the charter school. That left her a bad taste in her mouth, and she said that she would not return her child to public schools. The problem is she told her friends about it, and word of mouth, can be very harmful. These things are reducing our enrollment in public schools. One other thing is middle school. It's hard to keep these kids here. A few of the schools have excellent school programs and extra, after-school programs. And some of them have been forgotten. Girls' programs need to improve. There has been problems ever since Title IX. Going back to the charters, one mother said, besides her daughter's grades being good and as much attention was paid for boys' sports, she received a full ride and 19 offers to play sports at D1 colleges in a charter. We are not saying this is all due to the schools or the teachers. The parents have to also participate in this stuff too. In the past month, 9 kids under the age of 20 have been shot and murdered in our area. I know there has to be something else done. We commend you on the projects that you have completed, but as Mr. Curtis said, there's a lot more work to do. Please take this as helpful information. Believe me, I know this is extremely hard. I've worked in the community for over 30 years volunteering, but I greatly appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simons. All right, Mr. Love. No stranger to the mic. Welcome, sir. You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just want to tell everybody I started going to these school board meetings when Mr. Rogers was here, and it's been a while. A lot of problems got solved. Tonight, I'd like to, I have a friend that's in a little Bible study group. He's a former colonel in the Air Force, and he was rubbing his hands together at our last meeting, and he said, him and another guy watched the school board meeting, and he said, love, compassion, and special forces, and he started rubbing his hands together, and he wanted to hear about special forces. And I think we need special forces troops to what Eric West said, the former president of the school board when I started. He said, you want to blow up the pipeline to prison, don't you? I said, that's right. That's what we need the special forces guys for. We need to bring in the reading specialist for K through second, give them the 500 hours of tutoring if they need it, which 20% of the students will at least, and an hour every day for 3 years. And then they can go like Special Forces troops and train the other teachers, the K through second grade teachers. That's what Green Beret guys do. And that's the solution. And we're not following the rules, the current rules for the state of Missouri on Title I. And if we would follow the rules, just like the literacy law, I spent a year of school board meetings talking about this Senate Bill 319 literacy law that required students to get tutoring. And I went to the budget director in the basement of the Capitol, Mike Price, which is a perfect name for budget director. He said there's 5 pages of zeros here. That was every school and grade level, not $1 requested. You were here then, weren't you? Weren't you here? Well, I'm not supposed to ask any questions. And you guys aren't allowed to ask questions. I think that's strange. But anyway, the deal is the law, the rules say that parents and teachers, the narrative is parents and teachers the problem. The parents and teachers are supposed to have a meaningful consultation about if their child has a problem with reading, the low students, would you like to have a master's degree reading specialist tutoring your child every day for 3 years if they need it at no cost to you? Would you kindergarten, first and second grade teachers like to have your students tutored and fix the problem? That's the words my cousin used. She's a second grade teacher out at Blue Springs. She says that they come in, take the students, and they fix them. That's what can happen. And we're not asking them. So I guess I'm going to try to meet with Dr. Bedell and maybe file a little complaint if we need to, but hopefully we'll get those reading specialists next year in K through second. It's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Love. All right, another person who is not a stranger to the mic, Miss Angie Lyle, our District Advisory Council, here to report. Welcome, ma'am. You'll have 6 minutes.
What? I didn't know I get 6. I need to make these longer.
That is one strategy.
I just told him that you were nice and let me go over. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me again, Dr. Bedell and board, esteemed board. My name is Angie Lyle, and I'm a parent at Lincoln College Prep, and I do serve as the current DAC Executive Board Chair. The DAC is the District Advisory Committee for the Kansas City Public Schools. We held our last DAC general meeting, not the last one, but our most recent one was held just on the 16th, right before spring break. Our attendance continues to be around 15 to 20 online. We're not sure really about the replay video link yet. We're trying to follow up on where that is. It's not on the website yet. And we're really trying to push to have our DAC meetings sent out to the email list to make sure that they can come back and watch them. Because a lot of effort goes into putting those meetings on. I'm sure even the board members who come would like to know that more people reached them than 15 to 20 people. So we really want to make sure we get that out there. We have a couple of things to report on athletics. Our understanding is that a communication about partnering with the Positive Coaching Alliance has been initiated, and that there was a link forwarded to the board by Stephen Burton to all of us. So I don't know if you had a chance to watch their webinar, but he wanted me to extend that. And also, our board has become aware of some high-level changes within the department, and we were previously expecting Dr. Sanders to join us on our DAC general meeting in May, so we're hoping to find a new replacement for that speaker, and any help on that will be actually very helpful. And we also have an update regarding communications. We should be seeing a DAC presence in the upcoming Our Voice magazine. I'm not sure when that's going out. I'll ask. It should be coming out in the mailboxes, so we're hoping to see a DAC presence there. And also, I personally provided a video tutorial to the digital media team on how to create a transcription from our very long video recordings and create timestamps for those so that it would be easier for parents to just go directly to the time in the video for the segment that they want. So we're really going to start pounding the drum on that to make it happen, because it shouldn't just be for DAC meetings, but it could also be for these board meetings. And we suggest diving further into video technologies and investing in a system that works, because if we're going to be touting technology as our big thing moving forward for the school district, we really need to have that technology and the know-how and the savvy to back it up. So DAC elections are coming up. The next meeting that we have, we'll be electing a new board. And I just wanted to extend an invitation to everyone in the room, because it's not just for parents, it is for community and for teachers and for anyone who has a vested interest in the school district to become a voice for the district advisory committee, to reach out to me or to Courtney Adams on the KCPS team to find out what it will take to get involved with that. Finally, we did find out there's been some communication between the Student Leadership Conference organizers, and we wanted to bring it to someone's attention that there might be some overlapping conversations between student organizers and our existing partnerships with donors to the KCPS Foundation. I will talk to Dr. Collier about that maybe, but just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, because there are conversations being had with donors and the students are organizing it. So they don't necessarily know the nuances of the kinds of communications that need to happen. So I just wanted to kind of bring it to their attention. Our last meeting is going to be on May 5th at 6 p.m. It'll be virtual, and I can't wait to see everybody there. I know we'll have, who hasn't been? Yeah, we'll see you there. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Lyle. Appreciate it. All right, Dr. Bedell, I'm going to turn it over to you for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 3 items under this, well, actually a fourth. I'll make a quick announcement to close out the superintendent's report, but we have 3 items officially on the agenda. Video highlight, just to provide an overview of our Blueprint 2030 engagement and the future of where we're heading with that. We will then have Linda come up and conduct a revenue projections report, and then Ms. Shannon Jacks will take us through a repurposing update around policy, process, and priorities. So we'll roll the video.
It's an exciting time for Kansas City Public Schools. We are currently planning the future of our district through Blueprint 2030. Blueprint 2030 is our strategic plan to improve schools and enhance student experiences. We want to ensure all children living within the school district boundaries have access to a quality educational experience and graduate ready for college, career, and life. We have already engaged the community around the vision for KCPS and where you want the district to be by the year 2030. We have taken that feedback and developed potential scenarios or options. Now, it's time to look at what options there are to create the school system you want. During a series of community chats, KCPS will present Blueprint 2030 scenarios and get your feedback. The options will impact what your student learns when they're at school, who teaches your student and how they teach them, where your student learns, what your student's school building looks like, how your student responds to what's taught, and much, much more. These are important conversations and we need your input. Please join us for one of the following Blueprint 2030 community chats. And for more information, please visit www.kcpublicschools.org/blueprint.
All right, that concludes our video highlight. We will move to our revenue projections report, and we'll have Ms. Linda Quinley to provide that report.
Take up a lot of space. Good evening, Dr. Bedell, Board Chair, board members, and our community. It is that time of the year where we are knee-deep in budget work. And so we wanted to start with what resources we have as we then go into the second phase of the annual budget process, which is how should they be allocated and prioritized next year. So first slide. In a minute, first slide, there we go. Did you all do that? You did it, okay. Thank you, just so I can know who to indicate to. We wanted to start with looking at what we believe this year's projected actual revenue by primary source will be this year as compared to the budget amendment that you saw a couple of months ago. So at a high level, what you can see when you look in the fourth column over at the very bottom is a total of $5.8 million of revenues expected beyond that budget amendment that you approved recently. The bulk of that coming from local revenues, which of course is to be expected since that's the primary source of revenue that we live on. And this is really solely due to the fact that we're seeing a really high collection rate this year as compared to what we've had since 2019. So we're at about almost 93% compared to about 89% the last few years, indicating that we're getting back into the groove of the current assessments and the taxes on those assessments have sort of worked themselves out at a higher level, so therefore we're getting higher pay. So that is a real positive. The other line on here, the other two that I wanted to point out, under state funding, you'll see in the note, it's just over $500,000 above that amended budget. New FIT, which is Financial Institution Tax, I apologize for not giving that acronym and definition on there. Reduction. House Bill 604 2 years ago passed in the state of Missouri, and it gave some relief to financial institutions on the tax they pay, sort of in lieu of property taxes. The state came in and said, but we'll help make that difference up to the schools. And so that did in fact come into place. We are in fact seeing those revenues from the state this year. In the federal dollars, the increase there is really about the Medicaid reimbursement that we are eligible for the high cost supports of students for Medicaid services. So we're seeing a higher amount of services that are claimable and therefore a higher revenue than we've seen in past years. So that's this year. Then we move into, thank you, I'll just lay that down. Artificial. We move into next year, and we wanted to start because the Finance Committee had an opportunity to hear this information a couple weeks ago, and 4 or 5 days after they got it, a significant change came that impacted the revenue for next year. And you've heard us for some time talking about an expectation of a significant reduction in revenues next year based on the WADA, the weighted average daily attendance for us in charter schools, and how the funding works between the two of us. Recently, and Dr. Bedell and I had both reached out to DESE, he to the commissioner, myself to the deputy commissioner who does all the finance work, about our concern around the continued impact that COVID is having on attendance. It has affected our ability to have kids in school, teachers in school, bus drivers to get kids to school, and so we knew it was having an impact. DESE was having that very same conversation as we were bringing it to them, and so they've officially waived under 163.021, that statute that says if there was an epidemic whereby the school attendance is substantially reduced for an extended period, then distribution of how the money is made will be based on the next preceding year. So currently you'll see down there under the bold for 22-23, in the state of Missouri, you get to claim your WADA, that weighted average daily attendance, based on this year's number or the 2 years prior, whichever one is higher of the three. And so what they're doing for next year is they're saying we're going to give you 4 years. We're going to give you next year or the 3 years higher. Well, it is that third year that has been the better number for us for some time. Same is true for Classroom Trust, and that second bullet should say Classroom Trust and Proposition C, because they both use the same number. So we get an extended year for that. So that means that we have roughly 1,400 more WADA next year than we had been expecting as we had been planning previously. Next slide, please, June. So we'll go through a little bit of a narrative here and then we'll look at what these numbers mean. So current property taxes, what we're looking, these are just some primary lines of local revenue on this slide. We're expecting a net increase of $4.3 million. We were previously expecting a substantial net decrease. Current and important assumptions under the current tax revenue, since it's our primary line of revenue, it's not a reassessment year. So therefore, based on historical trend in recent times, we're assuming a 1% increase in assessed valuation. Fairly minor, but sort of consistent with what we've seen with our trend data. We're assuming 92.94% collection rate because that's where we are as of today this year. And so we expect that we would probably continue that in a non-reassessment year. There wouldn't be a reason to think that would roll backwards. That results in a net $5 million increase of current property tax revenues next year. The next line, delinquent property tax revenues, we are anticipating a decrease there as we're beginning to collect some of those prior year appeals, and so those are starting to roll off. So we are making a reduction there that may be a little conservative, but we're going with $4.9 million in decrease there. We'll continue to monitor that. We got about $3.5 million in just in the last 10 days from those prior year appeals. So they continue to roll in. Proposition C, that 2% sales tax across the state of Missouri for all schools, because of the waiver, we're moving to a $3.7 million increase next year. So we get to keep the ADA, the weighted average daily attendance number, plus they're projecting a $211 increase per pupil based on the sales tax collections in the state of Missouri right now. So net improvement there. So the overall impact of the DESI waiver to local revenue is $6.9 million of revenue next year we would not have otherwise gotten were it not for the waiver. Next slide, please, June. And then we should be looking at state. Yeah, so here's our state revenue. We are still assuming a decrease here, a net decrease of $3.5 million. Again, because of the waiver, some of the enrollment numbers that we had used originally for our projections become not necessary to use because you get to look at the multiple years going back. So under the current formula, we would be decreasing almost 1,800 WADA, and charters would be staying relatively flat. Under the one-time waiver, the charters are increasing almost 800, and our number stays the same, so we're not having that decrease we would have expected. Then there are several other lines of miscellaneous state revenue that make up about $750,000 that are just miscellaneous. So the net overall impact of the DESI waiver for state revenue purposes is an increase of $6 million we did not anticipate. On the federal revenue slide, an increase of $1.3 million, largely due to Medicaid, and we have realized that amount of claim this year, and so therefore we've assumed that we'll continue those services at that rate and continue that collection into next year. Based on current contracts, we've got about $317,000 of E-rate revenue. You don't see title and ESSER assumptions in here because they're project specific, so we're really looking at those primary two lines and looking at $1.3 million in increase in federal dollars. So then as we look at the next slide, we get to see what does this all mean in number form. It's not moving. Brian, can you move it? There we go. All right, so similar to the first slide we looked at for 21-22 projected actual, this is our 22-23 for next year. So you can go over to the fourth column to the bottom, roughly $2.2 million of revenue above this year's amendment amount that we brought you earlier in this year, and for all those reasons that we just spoke of. Whereas previously we expected to see 12-13 million less on this slide. So you see the dramatic impact of that one-year waiver that we received. Next slide, please. So here's sort of the summary of what that one-year waiver means. We get to use the higher of 4 years, and charters will as well. They'll adjust that. But that $13 million net revenue change for next year is a one-time gift, and that's really, I think, how we need to look at it. What it does is it pushes that deadline back a year. Where we were going to be addressing it next year, we're going to address it in the year after that. So it's not gone away, it's just delayed. And that's important as we plan to know that we've been given this other year for implementation of Blueprint 2030, continued work, And we see it as really an opportunity to work on enrollment and get that number to where it is to sustain the budget in the manner that we believe it should. And I think that's all we have. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Quinley. Questions? Mr. Barca.
So I want to go back and look at sorry, I know that probably going back is challenging, but the first projected revenues slide, 21, 22.
Uh-huh.
So just making sure I understand, the state gave a tax break that impacted us significantly and tried to make up for, just make sure I understand, somewhere in the realm between $7 and $7.5 million.
Are you talking about the financial institution tax under state?
Yeah.
No, so let me explain those numbers a little more carefully. That Amendment 1, we're saying that our state revenue will be a negative $7.5 million. That'll be the total state revenue this year, and that's because that's how the revenue to charters passes through in state. But it will be reduced to just under 7 because of the financial institution tax reduction that the state is funding. Were it not for that, state-funded FIT, financial institution tax, has gone down, and that's represented up in local. Okay. Mm-hmm. 1% in the homeowner. So $100,000 home. Somebody wants to do this math. Do you want me to grab my phone? Okay, $100,000 times 0.19 divided by 100 times 4.9599. Right? Yeah. That is their annual tax. So if 1% of that, they would get about $9. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the average for a $100,000 home. So you
Every 2
extrapolate it.
years, right?
Right.
Okay,
And then it,
so-
of course, is different during reassessment years.
And yeah, I think that's for the taxpayers who are listening to understand the reassessment process, making sure this is what you're likely to see change.
Correct.
And as a reminder, the county sends out a big bill initially, right?
Right.
And then your actual bill at the end of the year is usually different.
Usually.
For the lower end. So,
Correct.
okay. So it's not just us.
You are correct.
Okay.
Other questions? Ms. Wolfsey?
Okay, going to the 22-23 projected revenue. Did you say you know where I'm going?
June, can you move us forward a few slides, please, or someone? To the graph that's 22-23?
Yeah, I think Linda knows where I'm going to.
No, I don't. I'm just waiting.
The line for state.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So,
Back one more. Oh,
you almost had it, Brian.
forward one. Forward one. Forward one. Forward one.
One more.
There we go.
There we go. We're good. So, because of the gimme, is what I'm going to call it, and it wasn't a gimme. I mean, I'm glad to see that is that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education
Recognize that.
recognized what was going on. It's not just us; it's the entire
Right.
state. But because of that, that's why in the state line item I want to make sure I understand this here. This negative, the decrease of $3 million for next year.
Yes.
Are you saying that would have been even worse? And okay, so I just wanted to double check my thinking. I don't need to know how much worse, but what I want to know is we can affect the projected number still yet, can't we?
That is correct.
And that is our goal. That is what
correct.
I heard you say loud and clear, is that we got another grace of 12 months to try and retain and grow, so our enrollment number increases, and that this $3.5 million can go to zero. Or
The
get
7
positive. Let's flip this.
The 11 million could go to zero.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
You are correct.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Quinley. Appreciate it.
All right. Okay, that moved quick. All right, we will move over and Shannon Jacks will provide a repurposing initiative around process and policy evaluation. And this is something that I know we were planning to work on in our board retreat. We just couldn't squeeze it in. And so being that this is a business meeting tonight and this deals with district property, we felt it would be good to go through this process in front of the community. So Shannon, we'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. And I am also very excited to have Mr. Rogers here. No offense to anyone on the dais, but he's always been one of my favorite board members. He was also a representative of the neighborhood with the Chick School, so he got to see both sides of repurposing. Okay, so I'll stop. Maybe. There we go. Okay. So with the additional sites that we have recently moved to the surplus list and our efforts to streamline central office staffing, we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to touch base with the board to discuss some possible policy changes or priorities and also process improvements. To inform, I'm apparently going to need a lot of help. Next slide, please. Yes, that's perfect. So to inform our evaluation effort, not only did we kind of do an internal evaluation, but we also reached out to several cities and school districts that have double-digit school surplus sites. We didn't get feedback from all of them, but the ones that you see there are those that we had some really good conversations with. And our goal was really to learn more about their disposition efforts and to see if there's anything that we should consider including and incorporating into our process and maybe some priority policy ideas. Next slide. So a few key takeaways. I think the first thing to note is our process, while can always be better, provides a much higher level of community voice than any of these others. Except maybe the case of Edmonton, but it's still further down the road. And we're the only school district and city that allows the community to weigh in before a buyer is selected. We'll get back to some of the other things that we should consider about that later, but I do want to raise that. All other cities do provide list prices, mostly based off of fair market value, and I highlight that because it's something that we evaluated early on. We have not done it at the recommendation of our brokerage team. They thought that might potentially get us additional revenue on some sites, but I think that's something that we might want to reconsider. Cleveland, oh, no. Oh, am I doing that? Am I doing that? Well, okay, while you do that, I'll just talk. That's just, you have slides in front of you, people have copies. So while you all do that, Cleveland decided to issue an RFP for all of their sites at once. So this was 19 different sites. They thought it would attract more attention. They were really focusing more on developers, for-profit developers. And they thought that might draw more attention, especially from folks that might be interested in the Cleveland market, but might not if you just did one at a time. I highlight this because we decided at the beginning when we had 30 sites to kind of release them in tranches, so 4 to 6 at a time. I also want to highlight Edmonton's effort. So they proactively designated 20 of their vacant sites, so they don't have school buildings on them, but they designated those for redevelopment for first-time home buyers. So that was something that was a major issue for them. They're actually serving, it's not the school district, it's the city, they have a partnership, but the city is serving as the developer, and they're contributing the land value for the first 5 years as a way of making that entry point a little bit easier. The cost of land, they said, is typically about 8 to 11% of the overall cost of a townhouse or a condo. So that is something that I was like, ooh, we need to keep talking. Our current repurposing process, I tried to break it down so that it could be decipherable, but really 5 phases. Our major focus was to focus on transparency, credibility, something that had plagued the district previously, but also many other school districts, since this is not something that school districts are typically doing. We also, the board at the time, wanted to make sure we had a high level of community participation, and we worked to try to ensure that the developers or buyers actually delivered to the community and to the district what they promised. Because community participation and engagement was identified as a priority, it's incorporated into every phase. So my eyesight is horrible, but in the first phase, we had site tours and community discussions focused on the community, and then a second round of that community discussion after we had the technical reports. In the proposal solicitation, the offering guidelines incorporate, here's the feedback that we've heard from the community during those community meetings. Here are their priorities, here are their wants, here are their not wants. And we asked developers to respond specifically in their proposal as to how they were addressing community needs or wants. In the evaluation phase, we have public presentations where the community gets to hear about the project or proposal or proposals, weigh in, provide us our feedback, and that's always been something that's been factored in by every board in considering those proposals. In the fourth phase, we originally started doing this with a property use restriction agreement. So some of the things that the community said that they wanted, we incorporated those into that agreement. More recently with this board, you've also asked us to negotiate benefits agreements. And so we've kind of taken an additional step, both with that additional document, but also with additional community meetings focused on that. And then in the last phase, after closing, we have the requirement that a developer continue to have 2 additional meetings before a project is seeking their rezoning from the city. We give updates. Also, if a developer changes their proposal in any significant way that would alter what was allowed in the property use restriction agreement, we go back to the community. So that is a time-intensive process. And so something that we've done because it's been a priority of the board, but something that we also have to know as we look at downsizing. Are we getting the bang for the buck with all of those steps, or is that something that we want to consider reevaluating? So based off our internal evaluation of the process and then the information we collected from the other cities, we're recommending several process changes. I'm not going to read these to you, but I'm going to kind of go over how it changes the process in the next slide. The one that I do want to focus on is that 4th bullet. And I think we've talked to you about, with King Weeks being surplus, we are having some safety concerns at that site, so we don't want to hold off on starting the solicitation process. And so we'd like to move forward in April with listing both King Weeks and Scarrett with our brokerage team, starting that community engagement process kind of in parallel versus doing all of the community engagement first and then doing the solicitation process. But also including our remaining surplus sites. So Askew, Ashland, Meservey, and Pershing, and doing it more, not as a package where you would give a proposal for all of them, but at least that marketing effort is for all of those sites. So hopefully we can get some more attention and interest in doing that. You'll see that change reflected in my wonderful animation and graphics. That phase 1 and phase 2 end up being combined. And so we would prioritize soliciting those proposals a little bit early. We have more time to do that as the community has interest. I would say with the process that we had before, you get all this interest and then we had a lag within finishing all that work and then posting them. And then we lost some of the community, I think, participation at that time too. 2 other things, while the third-party technical reports were really helpful as we worked to build credibility in those early stages, it was a useful informational piece, especially for our nonprofit groups that are interested in sites. We believe that it's a step that we can forego. We have collected a lot of technical assessment work internally on these sites that we can still provide. I don't think we need the market analysis anymore. So that would save us additional time, and we wouldn't need to have that second meeting with the community reporting out on the technical report. So saving time also saves money for everyone. And then with the combination of those two phases, we could do the site tours and open houses more concurrently, which is also really important because we do have some safety concerns at those sites. Within the proposal evaluation process, we recommend that we formalize a review committee and our scoring process. So this is something we've done effectively when we've issued requests for expressions of interest, that kind of like an RFP. We've had review committee and scoring sheets. We've also done this well when we've had multiple proposals come in. We, and I mean I, have been lax at doing this when we have had just one proposal come in. So like for Greenwood that came in after several years, we did not engage a full committee and do the full scoring. But we recommend that this is something that we do going forward. Just it's a best practice that we should do. Not all the other cities or school districts are doing it, but everyone recognizes, yeah, it'd be good to do that. Okay, so that's kind of the process recommendations. With the policy priorities, so in talking with the other school districts and cities, it's not really something that they're doing. They're more market-driven aside from Edmonton. I would suggest that if we establish more policy priorities up front, that we allow for some purchase price flexibility. So if we want affordable housing, you have to find ways of paying for that. That we know that that's a struggle right now, that you don't have all those public funding sources. So that's something that we might want to consider. And then also that we have some more flexibility for projects that we want to be more KCPS led. So like what we're doing with Delano at this point in time. Aside from that, there are a couple bullet points on there. I want to give Dr. Bedell an opportunity to talk about some things that are priorities for him, and then an opportunity for you to discuss amongst yourselves if there are other things that you would like for us to consider going forward.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. Ms. Jackson and I had an opportunity to talk about this, and when you think about some of the things that you see on this list, this was a focus that we had put in place with our Ed Foundation around not just affordable housing as we think about what needs to happen for the community, but also from a faculty and staff standpoint, and really working with these potential partners or developers to figure out how the district can benefit in our ability to be able to attract staffing. We know right now that many of our people are being priced out of the city, and there are many studies out there that show that Kansas City has one of the highest growth rates in apartment rental rates. The housing market has gotten out of control. So ultimately what ends up happening is the affordability is just not a possibility inside the city anymore. And so while we do pay generously in our school district, a lot of that tax money then leaves and it goes elsewhere because we can't even find housing for people inside of this city at an affordable rate. So we want to be able to utilize these partnerships in that manner and make that become a part of the requirement that we really have to focus on. Is it 10 to 15% of the units? And then not just for teachers, but faculty and staff. We want to make sure that it's for contracted or non-contracted people that's working with the district. We want to have a focus on opportunities to partner from a youth-focused standpoint, the benefits of internship opportunities, externship opportunities. How do we work with these developers and say, we really want to make sure that as we enter into this MOU with you, that our students are able to benefit. That helps our bottom line around soft skill development with students, but it also helps our bottom line from a real-world learning market value asset standpoint. And it's an area that is a major focus on accountability for the state. And then, I think for us as a district, just wanting to make sure that overall, any new ideas that come our way, any new thoughts on how we can be better partners with these developers, oftentimes they're going to ask for incentives. So we need to make sure that there's an ask on our side, and we think that those are things that this board, when you think about what can go inside the benefit agreement, can make sure that those are in there. So as we enter into these projects, we don't have to worry about things being nebulous and always having to come back to you and say, what do you think about this? If we have those in there, then people know right from the beginning these are expectations that we want to see happen on behalf of our school district.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jackson. Dr. Bedell, I have a few questions and comments, but I'll open it up to the board. No, go ahead, Mr. Barca.
Fine, I was still trying to develop my thought.
Okay, I can go.
Yeah.
It's cool. Okay, you, Ms. Ford? Yeah, sure.
So I think I just want to kind of double down on the community engagement as a priority. I know me coming into this role and learning our responsibility with repurposing, that's always been something that's been a priority to me. And so just making sure we're asking those questions and involving the community, especially those directly impacted in the neighborhood, as much as possible, and ensuring that what we are presenting to them is desirable to them, is something for their community. I think as many opportunities that make sense that we're able to offer to them is something that I am definitely in favor of. I love the idea of having a committee that helps, review the proposals. I think that helps with community engagement, but then also transparency. I think it's a protection to us as well, and kind of helps with that checks and balances. So I don't think that it should matter the number of things that we're reviewing. I think it should be one or multiple. I think that should be just a standard best practice that we utilize. And something that's also been important to me is consistency and making sure that we're following the same process as much as possible across each property. I understand that there are certain nuances at different moments with different properties, but as much as possible being as consistent as possible. I think that is also something that's important to me.
Ready.
All right, Mr. Abarca, go ahead.
What an amazing process to be sitting here in this capacity with Mr. Rogers here, having been on the opposite side of the process as a community member, and now the roles are reversed, and Shannon's still a part of this. So thank you all for trying to perfect this to the best interest of everyone, because it is a very challenging process. I think as I was looking at these suggestions for priorities, I tripled down on a lot of these components as we look at what the priorities are of the type of development for these areas. And yeah, I just have a couple more suggestions. Oh, that means I got to stop talking. So I think one of them being additional priority for creative reuse of existing structures, probably one you can imagine I was going to say, and if not reuse, the preservation of historic fabric of these structures. I mean, and again, not just for the sake of historic preservation, but because generations of community members went to these schools, it is incredibly important to me to make sure community members can still tie back to our district in some way, whether that be an arch from the doorway that gets put in place in one of our buildings, something that continuously ties our buildings to our people. Dr. Bedell, your point about internships I think is important. I think the initial thought in my head was it would just be construction based, and so I want to make sure and expand that. As my colleague Chairman Hogan has always brought up, there are many more jobs in the development process than just construction, and that we should look for building the next wave of diverse, I hope, developers through these opportunities as well. This one's going to be kind of controversial, but that's my shtick. More than 1% to 3% of community benefit for these projects. And this is a big one, but let's tie the community benefit percentage to the incentive percentage that they're asking for, right? If we're going 20 years tax abatement at 50%, give us that in community benefit. It's going to be a long stretch, but the reality is the community has invested in these properties for generations, and why not get the community benefit out of it for generations and not just 5 years? So I'll leave it there and let my colleagues add more color to this.
Ms. Wolfsey?
I actually don't have much more to add. What I found interesting, Ms. Jacks, was the Edmonton piece. What I do know is that I think it was a few years ago, they were saying that we were in need of over 5,000 units of affordable housing, roughly. It may have changed. But I do know, as Dr. Bedell has already pointed out, how impactful that is obviously to recruitment, but I think we've all known for a long time how that impacts our mobility, which is everything in the world of our students. One of the most important things is stability, and the impact that something like working as did Edmonton on trying to use these to impact that affordable housing so that you can have some sort of stability for our families to begin to work from, I think would be great.
Okay, so I will echo Ms. Wolfsey on the Edmonton piece. I mean, yeah, it's hard not to look at that and go, wow, this would be something interesting to do here locally, right? And we know 14% of our kids are in transition. I mean, yeah, that would be huge. I also want to thank you for benchmarking us against some of these other cities, right? I wish that the city would do that more often. It's like everyone wants to come up with the wheel themselves when there's lots of really interesting work going on in other places that are similar to ours. So thank you for putting the work into that. So Ms. Ford mentioned the community engagement. I would agree with everything that she said. The one thing that I'd still like to see us do in a more robust way is, so the notification that we send out around the engagement pieces, and it was very narrow at first, and we expanded it some, but I'd like to see it be expanded even more, because I think we assume that the only people impacted by these repurposing events are the people who are very, very close to those facilities, when the reality is it could be entire neighborhoods and adjacent neighborhoods that are impacted by those opportunities as well. And so I think go broader. The worst thing that happens is you get people to show up and learn about their neighborhood, adjacent to them. And so I don't think anything bad can come from broadening the scope by which we engage the community. So I think that's my only comments. I think we're good to go, though. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Great presentation. Yes. Okay. Give me a quick second here to pull it up. All right. Let me get back to my agenda.
Cue the
So, okay, thank you. So just a couple of pieces here before we move to the board director's report. We do want to offer a congratulatory remark to Dr. Letitia Woodley. She was the 2022 Gratitude Honoree for First Call, a recovery champion, and in particular for the work that we charged her with around working with the community and putting together that student code of conduct that has moved it from being more punitive to it being a more restorative model. And, we want to thank you for your continuous work. I know you've gotten several recognitions here, one nationally with Ed Week and Leaders to Learn From, and now this one locally. So congratulations on that, and we're proud of you. I also do want to say this, so far things have been going well with us having removed our masks 2 weeks ago. We really have not run into many incidents, and even as we continue, one incident, but that we know of, but inside joke. So we're happy right now. Things seem to be going pretty well, but as I go in and I'm visiting campuses, it's interesting. I still see a number of students wearing masks. They've become a condition to just wanting to keep the mask on, including my daughter. And I'm seeing it with some of our educators. And at this point, we haven't had any major outbreaks. We'll keep knocking on wood, but I think things are going well so far in these first 2 weeks. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. And so, Dr. Woodley is probably one of the most decorated people that I know. It's like every third Thursday or something, there's a new award. I'm like, does this professional sleep ever? So no, thank you thank you for the work that you're putting in. I know your heart is absolutely in the work, and I think, I really think that makes the difference. And so thank you for that. Ms. Quinley, you're back up, and that's because we're going to transition to our infamous treasurer, Mr. Abarca, for the board treasurer's report.
Can we put that up here, please? I think that would be fun. Infamous treasurer is what I'm saying. So really, this is the Linda show, but I'm happy to report here. So just as a kind of preface, as we go through some of these slides, we're 2/3 of the way, or 66% of the way through our fiscal year. So in several of the future slides that you'll see after this one, really, on the right-hand side columns, you'll see a percentage as to where we have either brought in money or spent down money up until this point. So looking at that, I think we are starting right here. So our beginning fund balance, revenues and expenditures, revenue over and under column here to see the full outlay of our operating budget. Go ahead and transition to the next one. Okay. So our local revenues, we can see that we are basically 99% of the way. I was going to say it's moving, of current property taxes. So we expect to hit this budget in terms of our revenues coming in from property taxes. Thank you, tax payers, for getting your taxes in as quickly as possible so that we can make up for last fiscal year's collection. Delinquent taxes trail behind as we have not collected the amount presumed under appeal. We will monitor this line closely to the end of the fiscal year. So as well, for those folks, please pay your taxes. On line 5114, you will see that we have collected our annual payment for M&M taxes, which exceeded the budget for that line. Looking at our county and state revenues. On line 5211, we have received our annual payment for fines revenues. So starting to collect some of the county fines that have come through for the delinquent revenues. Looking at our federal revenues, we are 45% of the federal revenues. As a reminder, most federal revenues are spent and request reimbursement models, so they will always trail behind our actual percentage of the year completed at this point. Looking at our pie chart next, 71% of our revenue comes from local sources, to include property taxes, sale taxes, etc. Obviously, property taxes is the lion's share of the revenue source for us. Going on to our next slides here. Salaries and fringe benefits, a pretty hefty side of our expenditures component, but we'll break that down as we look to our pie chart in the future. At purchase services, we are trailing behind budget partially due to lack of access to human capital, such as substitutes. Looking at some additional supplies and materials here, just as the line items that you'll see that are expensed down. Again, comparing 66% of the way through the fiscal year at this point, if you're looking at our far right percentages. Okay, moving on, I was going to say the pie chart here. 46% of our budget is for salaries and benefits this year due to the fact that ESSER dollars have increased the non-staff budgets quite a bit. So traditionally we're at 60-something-ish. Okay, that's, numbers for us. 60-ish. And so this is a substantial change because of the federal dollars that have come in. Looking at our investment lines, investments to date are $210 million with regular maturities as needed. As a reminder, because the income or our revenues come in at big batches, we have to make these types of investments to cover cash flow throughout the remainder of the year. So I believe that is it for the normal treasurer's report, but we have a couple additions per our finance committee.
We do, and so we're going to have help from the guys in the back to run this for you. But at the recent finance committee, at multiple recent finance committees, we've been talking a lot about the tool called Balancing Act, which is a tool Mr. Abarca brought to us the city has used historically to allow engagement in the budget process. And so we began to play with it and starting to use it to determine how we can use it during that process as well this year. And so this is a short exercise. Hold on, Brian. A short exercise in how we're going to be using the tool to allocate some resources that are going to be granted to our schools based on enrollment to allow the staff in the schools and the families in the schools to choose how some capital dollars might be spent in each of their buildings. And so Brian is our parent, and he's received this survey. So he's opened it up. You see it's just a quick little item, so go right ahead into there. And it's going to first ask a little bit of demographics. So here it's asking, are you a resident? We should change that to say, are you a resident of the district, is what we really want to know. So I built this afternoon in about 10 minutes, so apologize, it's very user-friendly. And so you can see he has $34,200 available. So what that tells me is that school has 342 students, because we're allocating $100 per pupil to each of the schools in order for them to have some voice in their capital expenditures. So the principal and their staff have come up, and in each building they've already done this. They've thought about what are the things we think we need, and in some cases they've already had conversations with parents about what are the things you think they need. Sent that back into us, and where we are in the process right now is we're costing each of those options, because maybe they said we need a new wing on our building that would be $8 million, right? Or maybe they picked some of these items. So in this school, which is best elementary school ever, the leadership sent 6 options. The first being a U-Short bus for after-school tutoring. And I think that says, right below select, Brian, I don't have my glasses on. What does that say? Ballot, what's that say? Okay, because there's some additional information. I think if you click on that, you'll get it. But in this case, U-Short bus for after-school tutoring and activities that's specific for that school, $34,000. New sidewalks along East Street to allow for safer walking. Yes, that information. Can you click on that I after the title on one of those? There we go. And so it'll say add sidewalks for students who are walkers so they can be safer. So we have the opportunity to give a little deeper information inside of there. They have the opportunity in the little question box to ask questions. So we have new sidewalks, we have digital signage, and you can see there's been a cost assigned to each. Replace window air conditioning units in the media center. And Brian, if you could click on the I for there. So what we've said is we're going to replace these aging units while we await a GO bond to put central air into the space. So just giving them a little bit of depth of information. That one is $3,000. New sound system for the gymnasium community space, new pre-K playground. And so each has a price. And so what the person who's taking the survey can do, and Brian will ask you now to play your role and make some selections of what you would choose. And you do that as simply as clicking on the select button. So if he chooses the bus, you can see the green bar, he spent all of his money. He can't really make any more choices. So let's unchoose the bus and go again, make some other choices so that you can see it keeps track for you of where you are in the amount of money that you have to spend. So he's going to choose air conditioning units, the sidewalk, and he still has $13,000, so he's got enough money also then for the sound system. So let's say that those are his choices. If you scroll, there you go. Down below, it gives you the opportunity to now put them in your rank order. You've selected them in total to meet the dollars, but now you can move them around to say the most important thing to me is the new sound system. Now he's going to move sidewalks to the most important thing. So that gives you an opportunity to just say in total and then to prioritize those items. And when he's complete, he can submit. And when he does that, we're going to get a little more demographic data. We're going to ask age, and we're going to ask your gender if you choose to share, your postal code so that then we can start grabbing some of this data by who is responding to us, and their address, and then that's it. He's going to say he's not a robot, pick the photos of the motorcycles, and submit. And then immediately when he's done that, what the administrator on this survey can do is start pulling that data and looking at it in various nice charts and graphs and get that information immediately so that we have really nice feedback.
Love it. Go ahead, Mr. Abarca.
Thank you, Linda, for putting this together so quickly. I know
Yeah.
that was a fairly last-minute request, so this is hopefully shows the board what we can do and build out as we look towards future treasurer's reports and additional use in several different capacities with Blueprint 2030 and other opportunities with this specific tool, and provide some more transparency as to our budgeting process and how to engage folks. I call it the impact. I don't know remind me what it's called.
I call it the capital grants.
The
But impact it is.
the impact opportunity is supposed to be modeled off of the city's PIAC program to truly empower at the very grassroots level everyone from principals, teachers in our buildings to the neighbor who lives next door that wants to have some say in how money is spent at a micro level for our district, and simultaneously educate them about the budgeting process.
Yeah, next month, Ms. Thompson's team is going to be ready to work with us on some of the expenditure pieces that we're doing for the budget. So this is just sort of your introduction to the product. We may send you some ahead of time to say play with this and figure out how it works. But yeah, you'll see this from now through budget and continued in Blueprint 2030 as we work on it as well.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right, I think that concludes your report. Oh, sorry. Yep, go ahead, Ms. Buckner.
First, I just want to say thank you. This is really great. I would love to see our district move to all systems working in this way. I call it the Chick-fil-A way. It's like efficient, user-friendly, and you want to come back and do more. And delicious, right? Yeah, exactly. And so I heard you say that schools will be using this, individual schools would be using this, and how often would this be presented?
So we will use it with schools sporadically as we find a way. There are two models. There's a simulation model where they can build, and there's a prioritization model, which is what we just looked at, a prioritization model. So we've got a couple of different models. Schools will use it for this capital purpose, and then as we get into more Blueprint 2030 work, they'll be using it there again. Their budgets are a little more direct, and we work with them with here's your current, how do you want to change it? That's probably the better way for us to go with that, but this tool can be used by anyone in the system very readily. So if a school has some building-based project they'd like to utilize it on, instead of something that's coming out of central office, we can support them in that as well.
Sorry, I neglected to ask for questions. Any others? Okay, thank you. All right, I just have a quick update for the community purposes. So on Monday, we had a board meeting where Dr. Lavelle Brown out of Ithaca, New York, long-term superintendent there and a national and really international speaker on things like equity. And so he facilitated a really good conversation, sort of took a preview for us through our board policy, really reviewing it through an equity lens and highlighting some areas where he felt we needed to change some of the language and some of the intent even behind some of that language, as well as really getting to more affirmative language as opposed to punitive language, which is how the current document has been designed. And so he's going to go really deep on that, again, through the equity lens, and get that document back over to us fully reviewed I think it's next week. He said a week. And so then this board will review his changes and decide which ones to accept, which ones maybe don't work for our district, et cetera. But we've been wanting to do this for a really long time. It's long overdue, frankly. There's a lot going on, but no excuses. We've got to go do this because it will establish and really help establish and reinforce the culture in this district that we want to see, where every single child, faculty member, staff, administrator, et cetera, are really treated in an equitable manner. And so I just want the community to know that we're doing a lot of the hard work on that. And as soon as we have it to a place where the board feels pretty comfortable, we will engage the community to get their feedback as well and talk about things that they'll want to see in that document. So just wanted to kind of give everyone an update on that. All right, with that being said, we're going to move over to ad hoc committee reports. And I'm going to start with you, Ms. Wilsey, for government relations.
Well, no, I just wanted to let everybody, I'm looking at my phone because, House Bill 1552, which is the equity funding bill, is actually on the Senate floor right now being debated. So there's not much going on, a lot of talking, not a lot of debating. I think we may have some practices going on. So anybody that's listening may want to go on to I think it's senate.mo.gov, and then you go over to the right-hand side and you can actually just listen because you can't watch the debate, but if you're interested, that's going on right now. So just wait and see what happens at the end of the night. No, Linda's not listening to the Royals game. It's okay. We need you to listen.
Her favorite YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Oh, and hello, Ms. Cortez. You popped up on our screens. That was not awkward at all. All right. We're going to turn the mic over to Ms. Buckner to give us an update on the Community Engagement and Communications Committee.
That is a long name, a lot of C's. Yes. We met earlier this month. Over the next few months, we are engaging in conversations with neighborhood associations, asking for feedback specifically around the perception of Blueprint 2030 and the engagement around Blueprint 2030. We asked what are some ways the district can improve communication and engagement around this issue, and we had one representative from Hyde Park Neighborhood Association, and we received pretty good feedback, and the perception was positive. And so our next meeting is April 21st, and I think we have maybe one or two representatives from other, I can't think of the name of the associations that we have signed up, but that is April 21st at 5:30.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Buckner. All right, Dr. Bedell, I'm going to return the mic to you for regular business items.
All right, Mr. Chair, we have 6 items that we will ask the board to take action on today. The first being AFT Classified Collective Bargaining Agreement for 2022-23 in the amount of $570,900. As you all know, our administrative team worked with AFT teams to negotiate economics, basically salaries and benefits, only for the next fiscal year. The agreement is a step for experience on all AFT classified schedules, along with improvement in starting rate on each schedule. Those schedules are attached and have been shared with you. The administration is pleased to announce that all groups in this unit are now above $15 per hour at starting pay next year. The administration requests approval of these improved salary schedules for 2022-2023. These funds will be planned and included in the 2022-2023 budget.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Any questions? Mr. Abarca.
Kudos to the union, the negotiating team, Dr. Bedell, everyone in this process to prioritize a livable wage. This is incredibly important as we have the opportunity to empower our own by ensuring that we have a livable wage as a pay scale. So this is hopefully a floor for us, and we'll get to a place with additional support from our state legislature, our federal government, maybe our local taxing jurisdictions, to ensure that we can go even further with folks with the opportunities. So thank you all really for the hard work here.
You're here. Any other questions? All right. Well, with that, is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the collective bargaining agreement for AFT classified personnel?
So moved.
Second.
All right. It's moved and seconded. June, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Buckner?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 is the Gibson Consulting Group in the amount of $740,467. The administration is requesting approval of a 3-year agreement with Gibson Consulting to provide program evaluation of programs funded under ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. The cost of the evaluation work is funded as part of our ESSER plan and includes 23% MBE, WBE vendor participation. It is also important to note that both at the federal and state level, we will be evaluated on the numerous amount of programs that we have utilized these funds to invest. It is imperative that we have a very reliable and valid tracking system that will hold us accountable to these funds.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Questions? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the service agreement C-2202 ESSER evaluation services with Gibson Consulting Group?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, June, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
Ms. Buckner,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan.
Yes, the motion passes. Dr. Bedell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 3, the lawn firm, in the amount of $375,000. The administration requests approval of the mowing contract for the next 12 months. Due to the loss of staffing, our other lawn care partner was unable to bid, so we are moving to one partner versus two. This contract is 100% MWBE and will be funded in the annual operating budget.
All right, questions? No? All right. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the second renewal for C-19006 lawn mowing services with the lawn firm?
So moved.
Second.
All right, June, will you call the roll?
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Buckner,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan.
Yes, the motion passes. Dr. Bedell?
Mr. Chair, item number 4, Worldwide Technology, LLC, in the amount of $1,897,650. The administration requests approval of this agreement to purchase the replacement devices for 3rd through 6th grade for next year. There is a need to order devices this spring rather than in the summer months to assure a timely delivery. The cost of this contract will be covered by the current year operating budget. This contract is 100% MBE.
All right, questions?
Great work.
All right, I don't see any. So is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the expenditure to purchase laptops for elementary, 3rd and 4th, or 3rd through 6th grade to refresh the standardized fleet of older equipment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, June, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Buckner,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. On item E5, acceptance of the KCPS Ed Foundation pass-through of the Kaufman Foundation grant in the amount of $100,000. Administration is requesting acceptance of the pass-through of a grant from the Kaufman Foundation for the purpose of supporting the Restorative Justice Initiative. This is the 3rd phase of payment for that grant.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Questions?
I need to recuse myself from this one, given my employment at a Kaufman Foundation affiliate.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Seeing no other questions, is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the acceptance of the pass-through of the KCPS Education Foundation Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation grant for $100,000?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, June, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Buckner,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
thank you, Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan.
Yes, the motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our final item is item number 6, Mattie Rhodes MOU at no cost. The administration requests acceptance of the partnership agreement with Mattie Rhodes to provide mentoring opportunities to students in KCPS this school year. The MOU has no cost to the district.
All right, I'll have to recuse myself from this one. My wife serves on the board of Mattie Rhodes. Any questions? No? All right, is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the partnership agreement with Mattie Rhodes?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
All right, June, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Buckner,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
Dr. Jones, Ms. Wolfsey.
Yes.
The motion passes. All right, Dr. Bedell, on to consent items. So, I guess there's no questions here. So, June, will you please call the roll on approval of consent
I need a
items?
motion. I need
Oh.
a motion. and-
Is there a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, now, June, will you please call the roll?
Thank you. Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Buckner,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan.
Yes, the motion passes. All right, and to close out the night, June, will you please do a review of action items? I don't know that there were any
There were
tonight.
no task or action items given today.
All right, Dr. Bedell and team, look out. All right, thank you guys for the night. This meeting's adjourned.